People just need to adjourn the common
We're
council
live.
meeting.
We're live.
We're live. Okay.
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn.
No motion to adjourn, but
Alderman Carpenter.
Aye.
Alderman Marticello.
Aye.
Alderwoman Quistamars.
Aye.
Alderwoman Collins.
Aye. All right, rules and procedure meeting is now in session. You can leave it on.
And
Yeah,
Kelly
leave
has,
it on. Yeah, it's like the cow would be on. It would be on
Kelly's
the
bringing
cow
us
too.
back to her teacher days.
Yeah.
Smart School.
Can you pull up that slideshow for me?
So I'm gonna move,
Okay,
just so I can see this back.
that sounds good. Thanks.
And it's a touch screen, so you can.
Oh, that's
everything on
fun.
the TV.
Pretty
All
cool.
right, so tonight I want to talk about the submissions of resolution requests to our clerk. This is something that I've been wanting to work on for a while, but we did not have a steady clerk for a while where, I started working on it with our previous clerk, and then we had our temporary clerk, so I didn't want to put that on her. But, the goal is to have detailed, thorough resolutions that clearly state to the reader the intent and purpose of the action that we're taking, so that anybody can read it and know that. Also to assist the department heads in conveying those details to us. That's a challenge as well. The department heads are experts in their fields, but they may not be experts in government. And so we need to assist them in doing that, and to assist the clerk in obtaining these details that they need for resolution writing.
Clerk doesn't write the resolutions.
Read some of them.
I haven't written any of them.
You
They
haven't?
come to me already done. I just take them, drop them into,
According to the charter.
right on here. I just
Who's
drop
been
this.
writing them?
I get them from Attorney Casali. I get them from Louise. I've gotten them from Mark, or not Mark,
From the
Mike.
department heads.
Yeah.
The department heads are writing.
So if I get them before I send out the agenda, then I send them to Tony. But I haven't been getting them ahead of time. I've been getting them literally on Wednesdays, just before noon or right after noon, and they need to go out in the afternoon.
Yeah, so I mean,
write resolutions.
I know that, I believe that like Stephanie was writing a lot of them from what she said. From what I just gave you, that's the resolution
let me
request
just
form.
try, if I can chime in, I would say to you that, an example of a resolution that I don't prepare is a resolution adopting minutes from the last common council meeting. That doesn't ever come across my desk. Like we have a resolution on the agenda to transfer funds for equipment at the WWTP. Many times a resolution like that will not come across my desk.
Comes from Louise. Well, it comes from, like, one would come from Mike Clark with the net transfer number of where it's going from, where it's coming to.
Right, the previous, with Stephanie Gergen was here, what you have in front of you is the resolution request form that was used
Right.
primarily
So
before.
the department head's got this.
Yeah. So one thing that used to happen, here it is, and I think a lot of times the clerk would be too kind to let us know, she's up against a deadline, she's just putting it all in so she can meet that deadline. So here's the form that you have on here that say in a perfect world, came from the department head and a request to the clerk's office for a resolution. And basically, it says date, department, sponsored by, and then 3 lines for narrative. And then it says on here, has this request been reviewed by the department's governing committee? I don't know what the department's governing committee is. But if it's coming from the department head, then it would be reviewed by the department head.
Right.
So the review by the department's governing committee, yes or no? If no, the sponsor wishes to discuss at a committee meeting prior to the inclusion on the agenda, please contact the clerk to schedule the meeting. Please refer to the following request for resolution per the Common Council Rules of Order. And then it goes into the language that's in the charter about when there should be a committee meeting, and that's complicated in itself. I feel like that's clear as mud. And then on the back, we see here where the budget transfers are, what they need for the numbers and things like that.
That's a department head gets those numbers from Louise.
So what I'm proposing is a different form, called an legislative initiative form, which is similar to what I used in Schenectady County, that we would give the department heads that would help a little more guidance. So out of the date, the department, the committee, which, and then a title of proposed resolution. So like a resolution regarding the acceptance of monies from the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance for Code Blue Sheltering. I took this off of Schenectady County's, one of their meetings. Then the purpose and general idea. So this would just give an idea of the purpose of this. Why is this legislation coming before the board? This one says like provides authorization to accept funding from New York State Temporary Disability, blah, blah, blah. And then summary of provisions. And here's where we get into like the details that oftentimes we need in here. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a contract, but just the details of.
So it's a more informative narrative that has the
It's more guided.
the numbers, the financial numbers on there that we were speaking of many times.
We get to that part too, yeah. So the guide, kind of guides people instead of just saying like narrative. It kind of says like, well, what's the general idea? What's a summary of the provisions? Like, what are you actually doing here? The dates and things like that, if there's dates regarding it. Effects on present law, which really means the budget, because the budget is the law. We pass the budget and that becomes law. And then if we want to make those changes, that's what these resolutions do. And that's where they put the increased expense code, increased revenue code, and like a justification, like, we need to do this because we've run out of money for repairs for sanitation. We expect this to last for the next 6 months. And then all of those can just become like whereases in the resolution. So and this is given to us at the COW too, so we see this. I would oftentimes ask our previous clerks, like, send to us what you're getting from department heads before you create this, so that we know you're getting what you need to put together a resolution, like a agenda. The agenda is a big deal. Like asking the common council to take on resolutions to change or amend the budget has to be a big deal. It can't just be slapped together and thrown to her like 5 minutes before. And we kind of need to have her back on that and say, like, if this comes in and you don't have what you need, then it doesn't go on the agenda. If you don't have at least all this, where, you can write those whereases. And I believe there were, like, the clerk was writing certain ones. I don't know that Louise, like our controller, should be writing resolutions. I think that's kind of outside
Kelly, can I just comment a
hers,
second?
yeah.
Because I've had conversations with Stephanie when she was here, and we used to I used to call her and said, Stephanie, who wrote this? She goes, well, I was trying to write it. I said, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's a training issue where you have to train your department heads on this to tell them what is necessary.
Yeah,
And then the clerk has to be trained and understand what she's reading and putting it together, which is kind of hard for her because that's really not her area.
So Stace, if you don't mind me asking a question, how many resolutions do you write in the course of, like, how many of those
The
are part of
only
that big
ones that
resolution?
I put together are to
Meeting
approve
minutes.
the meetings, that's it.
Okay.
Other
he's
than
not
that,
writing
they
the
come to me already
No, I
done.
know, but
Oh,
if
okay.
we're expecting her to get these from department heads and it's going to her when she's not doing writing it, it'd really go to Anthony.
well, and I think they're writing it because she's new or because we had a temporary clerk before. Like, I think Stephanie was writing a lot, is what you're saying,
Yeah,
is what she was thinking.
she was right, they would give her bits and pieces.
Yeah,
And she would put it together
and she'd be
based on,
pulling from all
yes,
these places, and I'm like, that's not
and
So,
asking
but-
questions.
right. Lots of follow-up questions, lots of running around, where I don't think that was her job too, but taking something like this and kind of just making it a whereas, that makes sense, then becomes a resolution for, some of these standard transfers.
So-
This is up to us to decide, like, we get to decide what the process is. She's our clerk, like, we should have her back, doing these things, and, we can have a certain set of standards that we want people to follow so that when we do have these in front of us, a lot of the information is there. And then we would talk about this in the COW. It even go a step further. In Schenectady County, it would be the initiative, and then it would be a memo from, here, in this case, they have a county man. This is from the finance director. And then it just says, like, this is the finance director's role, right? The expense code and the revenue code, here it is. And I recommend that this be presented to the legislature for consideration. And then she gives that to the manager, and the manager,
What body is this?
this is Schenectady County Legislature,
Common Council?
the county. In Schenectady
County.
County, yep.
Would you ever look at the county resolutions in Montgomery County she had written?
I've looked at some of them, yeah, and I've looked at their charter too. Their charter's really
Well, okay,
good.
just to,
Yeah,
Kelly, just to make this, and I'm gonna make it short. We went through this with, when Alderman Davis was here, and then a few other aldermen were here, and we finally got it down to where it is right now. If you look at the charter, resolutions come from Corporation Council. And this is finally how we got it down to. It was like Stephanie taking the bowl and let me do this, and she was doing people's work for them. And the department heads got lazy because she did everything. But you know what? She got herself into a jam because everything was last minute. And Tony would say, because I asked Tony this, all she has to do is ask me. Just get it to me. Am I right, Tom?
So I generally agree with.
And that's what the
Jimmy.
charter says.
That's what I was gonna say.
No.
I generally agree with you. I don't know that without referring to the charter that I agree verbatim. But as to the premise of, have I always been available to the clerk,
No,
whoever the clerk was?
Of course not.
Of course I'm available. No, I am.
You're late.
No, he was talking history,
Right.
not you specifically.
My own 2 cents is I don't have any personal issue with anything that's being suggested here. I do have a concern, which perhaps Kelly can speak about. I'm envisioning that this is going to slow down business of the city because in my mind, the document you had up before this, not that,
Let me see if I can do it.
the legislative.
initiative form,
Yes.
which I do have. a
Well,
copy for this.
I don't understand how the county.
It seems to me that the legislative
Okay.
initiative form is going to require a lot of interplay and work between the department head and the common council member that is going to sponsor the resolution prior to it ever getting to my desk.
How do you get the resolution?
So guys, they just come to me. This request for resolution that we've had on the books since the time I've got here. I've been here, this is my 6th year. I think I've received one of these, maybe 2 of them. in the
I
6
think
years
it's
I've been
important for Stacy to know how to do that, but it seems to me like it's more of a department head issue, that if we want them to
Well, that's the
change the
point,
way
is
that
that
they're doing
nobody's
it.
using the system that we have. I think the system can be improved. Yeah, and I think,
But,
yeah.
so, my 2 cents, there's a lot of legalities in resolutions, and nothing against Stacy, but Stephanie was here for 12 years. So she may have jumped in and said, well, let me do that because I didn't get it on time. But Anthony's the
Doesn't
lawyer.
12 years.
He's the one that is responsible for writing the legalities into the resolution. And that's a big difference between writing up a resolution where we're talking about, well, just for tonight, we're talking about all the figures that we had for his software update, or Stacy writing a resolution for adopting meeting minutes. There's a lot of legalities that we have to consider. So I'm thinking that if we're expecting resolutions to come in to either person, it's really a department head update to ask them to write them the way that you really want.
but we want to hear, I want to get a consensus from everyone here. I mean, and in the past, like not when you were here, but in the past, I have made the suggestion that we go back to we can have a deadline to Stacy on Wednesday, where Stacy puts everything together. She emails it to Attorney Casali, by COB on Wednesday, and he has like a day to review it and, you know, mark it up, because that used to, you know, that's something you could just do very easily on Word, you know, mark it up, make any changes, and then it gets given to the council by Friday.
So,
And that had been the case prior to the Dave Dybus review of it, and that got voted down last time I suggested it. But I do think that that adds the level of, yeah, it would be virtually impossible if the department heads have the same deadline as the clerk, as the attorney, then yeah, then the clerk and the attorney don't really have any time to review, because it is going to come in. Like, this happened to me when I worked at the Schenectady County Legislature, 5 o'clock on a Friday, everybody dropped their memos on my desk as they left, and I worked another 2 hours. Like, we don't want to do that to our clerk. And, you know, there's no time for the attorney to review it if we have that one deadline for everybody.
so the way that's in the charter, it's at, section 15-3, of the code, that is. And it says, you know, I'll read it to you. I mean, this is where I was getting at. I don't necessarily agree verbatim with what Jimmy says, because the way it reads, it says that under subsection 6, the city clerk shall assemble the agenda and forward the same electronically in editable form, supporting documentation to the corporation council on or before 4 p.m. on the Wednesday preceding the meeting. Then under subsection 7, Corporation Council shall review the agenda and associated resolutions, ordinances, and local laws, and return the same to the city clerk by 12 o'clock on noon on Friday. So the way this reads is that
Assemble, that's the word.
it goes to her
Assemble.
to
Assemble.
assemble.
Not
Then
right.
I
Assemble.
review,
That's it,
then I review and give back to her.
right.
If we were to do this, if we were to do things this
Yeah.
way,
But it got moved to Wednesday because Dave Dybus wouldn't check email.
if it were to be
But if it
done,
goes to Friday, then we're getting them 3 days later than we would normally get them.
my
And I know
whole-
part of our concern is that we talked about this before, that sometimes, like especially consent resolutions, we get them a day or two before. And, you know, we don't really have a lot of time to process what's in them, to research anything that we want to discuss. Because our resolutions are put on, or our agendas are put online on Wednesday.
Right now, the department head prepares the resolution.
Yes.
And that way, whatever they need, for example, and what I was trying to say, Kelly, in the county, they have committees. There's 3 to 5 in the committee. They assemble what they're gonna vote on. It comes out of committee, it gives it to as a whole, they vote on it. So the committee, we're like the committee, we're the 5. It comes out of here, we vote on. That's the only bypass between us and the county. County is, you know, one vote, they vote on it. The way this is written, and I'm glad you gave this to me, because I was just looking at this. It says in here, describe why this resolution is necessary, and there's a narrative. Well, a lot of times the department head will call me. Ralph Spagnola will call me and say, Jim, I'm putting a resolution on, and this is what I need it for. And I'm a department head for the Department of Public Works. Same thing. That way, I come right to you and I tell you right at the meeting what they tell me. Now, if there's anything specifically in here, if the mayor knows about it, I'll let the mayor describe it more in detail than anything I have in here. And we work together with the department head, the mayor, and myself. And that's how we put these resolutions together. Then once we have it all down and they call me, everybody I always told, and no offense, Irene, but that golf commission meeting, tonight, Chris and I are the golf commission.
Mhm.
So that should have came to us, we would have reviewed it and made it a thing. I didn't see that until tonight,
Because there was a consent.
and it's on consent, so I just picked that up, don't believe me, and I read it, I'm trying to understand it. It's just like the department heads call the alderman. That's why, as a deputy mayor, Kelly, you, maybe, there's chairmanships. That's why we're a chairman.
Sure.
Because the resolutions go to the chairman, we make that decision of where the resolution is coming from, and we explain it. That's why we had this meeting at 5:30. We explain everything. And hopefully, no alderman should put a resolution on the council without even know what it's about. For me to get a resolution for consent, and that's your beef, Larry? It just came to me, and I haven't read this, I have no idea what this is about, that's wrong.
Yeah, well, I think we all share that opinion.
Well, Kelly doesn't like that at all.
Well, she doesn't like getting a consent resolution the day before and she can't research it.
I'd like to
I'm
see
not
things
speaking
in
for you, I'm
writing.
sorry.
No, I would like to see things in writing.
Exactly.
So when you say like, oh, well, Rob Spagnola calls me and tells me what it's about, and I could just tell you what it's about, no, like, that's not how we do business.
So-
Like, things need to be in
Well,
writing
wait a
about
minute.
why we need to, what we need to do, so we are all seeing the same thing.
Why
When
should
this
the
came up a couple
department
of
head
months
write
ago,
it
whenever they
down?
called
What they
me,
talk to you
I'd
about,
say right
if they
there.
wrote it
I said
down,
right
you
You wanna
wouldn't
see the
have to
narrative?
explain it to anybody.
That's the
Well,
narrative.
that's what I'm saying.
Right, but Anthony's saying he's only seen one of those in his entire
Right.
time here. Stacy's seen
Exactly.
zero. Like,
Exactly.
nobody is actually even using that
Right.
one.
Well, then they should use that, they should forward this.
But
to
that's
you.
what she's suggesting.
Guys,
that we-
At minimum,
Let me
that's
try to-
what our clerk should
yeah.
be receiving, and they're not.
Let me try to get out of thought, please. Number one, let's agree that the city's not handling the presentation of legislation the way it's codified under the code. No, that's a
Right.
fact, okay, number one. Number two, if we were to strictly comply with what's in the code right now, without changing anything, then the window that I have to review everything is from 4 o'clock on Wednesday until 9 o'clock on Friday morning, where I would be revising the agenda, including any resolutions and ordinances and local laws and the like,
What about contracts?
and this, and all of that. And I submit to you all that that would not be a great way for us to do business. The way it is now is the department head will come to me saying, essentially, we have a contract, we need this done. And I just draft the whole thing and submit it to, the way I typically do it is I'll submit it to the department head, I always task the department head with finding a sponsor. So I copy the sponsor, I copy the clerk, I copy the mayor, and I copy Michelle. And that's pretty much without fail the way I handle all pieces of legislation that I draft. Going back to the code again, there's no provision in the code that calls for these, quote, consent resolutions that we do all the time here. And I also believe that the way the city of Amsterdam handles the consent resolutions maximizes the ability for us to do business. So that is to say, if we strictly complied with what was in the code, after Wednesday at noon, if something comes to me at 12:05, I'll say, all right, well, we'll deal with this on the next agenda 2 weeks from now. And that would just be a terrible way to do
So
business.
we need to
if we
change the
did
code,
that.
we need to change the charter.
No, I wouldn't change
We're
that,
not,
because
we're not gonna follow it.
I would,
Let him finish,
I
can we
wouldn't change
finish where you're going with that?
So, I mean, I perceive that the overall issue, this is just my impression from what I observe, is that some of you want some additional details regarding the substance of a contract or maybe some monetary recitals and things of that like. In my mind, the best window to do that is the window of time between when the department says, hey, Tony, we have a contract that we need drafted, and my presentation of it to the clerk. So that there's plenty of time for feedback for the resolution sponsor to say, oh, I want to put this in here, I want to add this language. Many times, we're not only dealing with insertion of numbers or recitals from the contract, but you're dealing with policy justifications and decisions of why we're passing the resolution. And many times I find myself drafting what I think is the most straightforward way of presenting that issue, but I never will give you an elaborate whereas, all of these reasons why we're doing something, because you're the legislators. That really comes from you. I'm trying to draft it in a way that's legally sufficient, and if any of the legislators want to expand upon it, I don't take offense to that in the slightest. I mean, that's
And that's what this
Wonderful.
form, part of it does, it doesn't have to say what this says, I mean, we can make it say whatever it wants, but it's saying like, why are we doing this? What's the history and background of this? Like, those types of things that a lot of times we're looking for, like, sure, he gives us what is legally sufficient for the contract, but why are we doing this? Where does this contract connect to? Who, who does it affect? Those types of things, or like like, let's take that sanitation one tonight where we're talking about just the contingency, and this isn't you, this is like when we were switching from the contingency tonight. Was that in the main agenda? Those are the main agenda. You know, whereas the city budgeted $30,000 for sanitation vehicle repairs. Whereas the city has already incurred close to $50,000 in necessary repairs with 4 months remaining. The controllers authorized transfer of funds from the 2024-25 budget as follows. You know, it could be just a little bit more information on that, or, you know, they believe that this will take on the rest of it.
Kelly,
Like
what
when
if
you
we-
saw it, you had like a lot of questions, like, didn't we just spend money on this? Didn't we do that? Some more context could be in that resolution.
Shelley, what if we ask the department heads to create, you know, follow a format with a form like that and attach it to the resolution?
Yeah.
Instead of making it part of the resolution, and then they'd have more time.
It wouldn't be attached to the resolution.
Well,
It's
it would be
just
part of the
basis upon
committee.
which-
Part of the
Well, I mean,
committee.
It'd be part of the
They're not
cap.
filling it out now, we just ask them to fill it out, it gives them a narrative.
But what you're gonna run into,
No, I know, but
what you're invariably gonna end
Right.
up running into is.
Slowing down the
I'll pick on-
process.
I'll just pick on a couple of you for purposes of illustration. When Jimmy fills out one of those legislative intent forms,
I don't.
and he provides a summary of specific provisions about why it should be done. In the resolution he sponsors, he might have one line, and that might be all that he wants as the sponsor. When Alderwoman Quistamars wants to draft a resolution, she may have several paragraphs that she wants to express in the detail. And I think that to a certain degree, that comes to the discretion of the sponsor of the resolution. Not to the clerk, not to me, but to the sponsor to make those determinations.
Well, that's why we have department heads. That's why we have,
Well, that's why we have you guys,
that's why
not
we
the
have,
department.
that's why we have chairmen.
You're the
And
legislator.
I'm,
Right, well, what it happens is, yes, it's, oh, will you sponsor this? Yeah, okay, all right, and then it just go, you know, that, yeah, like, you're saying that, like, that it's incumbent on us to submit, that we're the ones that
I
should be
think,
submitting
again, that's what I'm
this.
saying, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, ask the department heads to provide that information when they submit not
Right,
change.
that's fine.
Right.
I welcome
And
it.
so they have access to it.
It just seems to me that it's going to create a layer of work that's going to need to be done between the department head
And the
and the
council.
sponsor
Mhm.
before it reaches me.
Right.
And if you guys are good with it, I'm good with it.
Well, like, for
It's gonna be
example,
a-
Mike Clark calls me.
There's gonna be a
asks me to
diversity of
sponsor
quality of what's submitted, be based upon who is doing the submitting and who is asking for the information. There's gonna be, it's not gonna be uniform or standard,
Right,
but at least it'll be, if they follow a format, you know, why are you asking for this? Where's the money coming from, et cetera.
mhm.
Even if they answer it in one question or, you know, at least you have something from that department head.
Mayor, the other day, 2 weeks ago, Rob Spangler gave me this this
Yes.
form right here.
Yes,
And it says narrative. We received a
that's right.
grant about the bike racks. He explained the whole thing to me right
Exactly,
here.
exactly.
And it was right here.
And
it
you
was
were
in my-
happy with it.
And it was in my mailbox. This was in my mailbox.
Yeah.
But
Plus,
that resolution we saw about the bike racks
Didn't have
had
any of
nothing
that. And
of that.
she's saying, why,
It did, it had-
why
it
can't
had
that be
2
part of
pages.
the?
Well, it had a
information?
contract to it.
It had a
but the
contract.
actual
It had a contract.
resolution didn't
read the,
have-
had a
No, I know,
contract.
but why, but it didn't have the narrative.
No.
But what she said, why didn't you
It
just
didn't have the
attach what
narrative
he
of
gave
who
you?
made pages.
Unless I was born in another day.
Why don't you just
I'd rather have a
attach what he
contract
gave
than a
you
narrative. I
to
mean, I
the
can read a
package?
contract.
I'm saying, why don't we just attach
Okay.
these submissions,
Right,
what
we'd like
was
to
in your
see-
mailbox
Yeah,
to the packet sent to the council?
That's a good idea,
You're
Mayor.
both- You're both
See, that,
right.
don't say about the bike rack. He had a contract there from the person.
the bike rack registration was crap. It was
Crap, it was
absolute crap.
free, it was a contract, and it was given to us. What else did you wanna know? What else did you wanna know?
But wouldn't you like to have an
Who he was
abstract?
doing, where it was going, who owned it, all those different things.
What the heck?
Oh, I know. Every time I bring up a
No, I
change
think,
in
again,
it,
I
you
think-
get nervous because you like to do things your way.
No, because you know what?
And, you
I'll
know,
tell
as
you
long,
why,
as
in
long
my
as
way.
you know all
That's
the
the right
details,
thing.
it's okay, but
You
we
wanna
don't
change
have.
That's what Tony's trying to say.
You wanna sit
That's
over
what-
here, you wanna do it done in Schenectady County.
I think there's.
I don't care about Schenectady County, I'm
But Tony,
Montgomery
but that's
County.
what Tony is saying. Everybody has
Well, Montgomery
different
County-
different needs.
When we get to narratives, And I know that like, as a teacher, when you get to 3 sentences, you know what all the students do? They skip it. In my job, we get forms where it says, please explain the problem you're having. People still skip
I
it.
know you're gonna find it shocking, but I was a health teacher for 12 years, so I kinda know all about this stuff.
Why don't we just agree that the department heads have to fill this out, and whenever they call us about
As a
a
first step.
resolution, that they have to put the narrative, just tell them, make sure you fill out the narrative,
Say something.
so Anthony has.
And
the
why don't you guys get together, and if you want improvements to that form, or like,
That's what this meeting
I know, but I'm
literally
saying,
is. Yes.
you know, go ahead and submit it, and let us send it to the department and say, what do you think?
But
Go
going
ahead.
back to the code for a minute, one thing that I've never liked.
Code or charter?
It's in the code. It's under the city code, under common council rules for the code. One thing that I've never liked is that provision saying that the clerk prepares the agenda, and then once it's completed, it's submitted to me as a whole, and then I have a 36-hour window to
them all.
review and edit it. That's not good. That's not good enough. That's not enough time. Rather, the way we do it now, which is piecemealing, one resolution at a time.
To you,
To me, then when I'm done, it goes to the clerk. It maximizes our ability to do business that way.
And it allows her to post them a week before.
right, nobody drops it on her
For
desk at a
everybody
certain time
online
of the day.
and the public.
And back to consent resolutions, you know, I do think that, number one, the way you guys do it is you make a vote to amend the agenda,
Right.
right? You have to pass that motion. There's always the ability to say, we don't adopt the agenda with this amendment. So you have that discretion. But by doing it that way, again, it gives the council the opportunity to entertain and present legislation that's readied after 12 PM on Wednesday, rather than waiting until the subsequent meeting, which could be 3 weeks away in some instances, where you have 5 weeks in the month, and it's at the second meeting that we're talking about. It'll be 3 weeks before your next meeting. So this gives you the ability with the consent resolutions to do that. In other jurisdictions that I have represented, they don't treat consent resolutions like consent resolutions. They treat the same dynamic as an emergency resolution. And in those other jurisdictions that I'm referring to, what we call here a consent that we see all the time happens maybe once or twice a year over there, because same type of issues. The council doesn't want to see things last minute, doesn't want to have to vote on things last minute. So there, the dynamic or notion of a consent resolution is poo-pooed very much. It is only done in the most emergency type circumstances. I've experienced both. I've watched the business of both cities that I'm referring to being done. I think that in contrasting the emergency resolution with the consent resolution, I think the way that the city of Amsterdam does this is far more productive in terms of getting the business of the city done.
Well, if I could add to that, back to Schenectady County, they would have a committee meeting prior to the legislative meeting, the Ways and Means, and anything that needed to go through that day that hadn't been in the previous committee would go through Ways and Means and then get voted on just so they had like the consent as well. And so I'm not saying it has to be like so specific as this, but I feel like when you break things down for people a little bit more than just very generally the narrative, and then, I mean, this part about like mandatory referral to committee is very complicated, and like, we
So
never.
this is the form you want to use.
Well, I'm just saying we could add to this form, instead of just narrative, maybe
This is the form we do use.
Whatever a majority of the council
Yeah,
wants
whatever we
that form to
decide,
be,
if there's something we could have.
let's submit it, and you can give it to the department heads. You
Yeah.
can
Let me
say,
ask you
what do
this.
you think?
Let-
Go ahead.
Let me interrupt a second. Why don't each of us talk to our committee, our department heads with the form and say, tell me what you think about it? How does this help you create the document that we need to vote on?
But
What
what
would you
information do you want
Right.
from them is
What would you
important.
change?
If they're not giving you something that you want,
Exactly.
you need to tell them what it is that you
Yes.
want, and it needs to be incorporated into the form.
I mean, even if
Right.
it's just like the what and then the
I-
why, a lot of
exactly.
times what we're
Yeah.
missing,
I-
and this is the why.
discuss
Because
that. Review.
some-
That's
You
as
have to
simple as that.
understand that
Try it
sometimes
first.
it's not the department head creating this. It's their secretary or someone else that works in the department that's saying, I need this, and they have been assigned to do it, put it together. And then they give it to the department head and he or she goes, oh yeah, that looks good. And then it comes
Right.
to here. So I think we should start with our departments, talk to whoever is generating the documents and tell them, Kelly, you should come up with these questions and ask them, does this help you create the document that we need for the council?
So let me try to make a suggestion, if I might. I think that in terms of the code, chapter 15 of the code, let's agree that there is not compliance with it. Sounds like we want to tweak some things, and I suggest that we do that, right? But when it comes time to modifying the code, I don't know how this ended up in the city code rather than the charter to begin with. This was apparently was done in 2012. These provisions appear to me to be much more appropriate to be in the city charter rather than a chapter in the Amsterdam City Code.
And what a piece that's missing from this though, because like you said, we're in violation, but we're not based on the resolution that was passed during, when we're talking about the Alderman Dybus was here. So we are following the procedures that were last passed by a council. But I don't know how that edits the code or how that is, but we do have a legislation that matches what we're doing.
There's resolutions that say this is how we're going to
Yeah.
do it, yes. And the way I have justified it to myself and to the council and prior embodiments of the council is on that very note, that we're not in violation of the charter because this is not codified in the charter.
Mhm.
It should be codified in the charter, but
Yeah.
it's not, it's in the code. And even if theoretically, I don't know that the members of the council can violate the city code, so to speak. I don't know that we can be brought up on charges for violating the code. It's really more appropriate for it to be found in a charter rather than a code.
I was just trying to tackle a small piece of this because yes, like we can go down the rabbit hole on this forever. But the small piece of, are we getting resolutions on our desks that we want to see, that we're proud of, that when people read them 10 years from now, they know what we did and why we did it? That I want to tackle first. And then if we go down to, those types of things, we could. But this was the first step of probably many steps if we really want to dig into it. If you look at the Montgomery County charter and how it explains the process of the legislature versus how it explains ours explains the process of the council, it's like ours is like mud and theirs is just so clear and everybody would be on the same page. But that's so far down the road. I think right now it's just this like, how can we get the what, where, when, why type situation out here?
So why don't we do this? I really like Irene's idea. Why don't we take this forward, sit down with our department heads over the next 2 weeks, ask them what things they like about it, what things they don't like about it, what would they like to see change, and then get together at our next council meeting and have a brief conversation about what
This form,
changes.
Chris?
Yes.
But you want to also make clear there's things that are missing from this form
Yes.
that you would like to add. What do you think
Yes.
about that?
Right.
So I'm saying maybe you should develop a form before you go to them.
First thing you should do, you should all you're gonna get rid of all this then, because none of us follow this.
Agreed.
Yeah, we don't do the the committee thing is useless. Yeah.
Oh, There's one line right here. The city clerk, after consultation with the applicable committee chairperson, will schedule a committee meeting
Mhm.
within 2 weeks of the submission of the request.
Yeah, no, we can't do that.
This is all straight from the charter. Yeah.
I got, last
Again,
question.
which is so it's
Last
unclear.
question I won't ask, Ms. Stacy, you're brand new.
Mhm.
Are you having any problems that you can share with the council right now as we're doing resolutions that you see that you would say change or do different? And I'm not putting you on the spot, just tell me because you're brand new.
The only thing is the last minute ones. And my thing is with the last minute ones, it's not in what I have to do, but I feel like I'm getting them to you guys late. Like I'm like, oh my goodness, now here's another one. And like today I got one and I'm like, the meeting's in a few hours. So that's my issue, is you guys aren't getting what you need because I'm not getting it in time to give it to you. And I get it.
We appreciate that you feel like.
So, and here, I get them, and then it's not just, I don't get them exactly like this. I have to take it, drop it into the template, bold, whatever. That's part of my job. I'm okay with that. It's me not getting it to you guys that I'm bothered by. Or when I get something and we've had resolutions that were wrong, and then we're sitting here and they're like, oh, this is wrong. Or I get an email, we have to amend this. And I'm like, well, I don't know what I don't know. I'm just receiving it exactly the way it is, putting it in the format, and then sending it out.
Well, we have to amend ones that Anthony does as well, so don't take it personally, like, we have to amend it, it's your fault.
No, but
Well, we
that's the
could
thing.
also
is-
request that like we're on those emails that get sent to Stacy. Like if
Yes.
it's your committee or my committee, like they should include us on that so we know what she's receiving.
Well, I want, let me see, this is what's over there, right?
Yeah, so you guys have both the forms. You have the current one, you have just the like suggested one, and it can be much simpler. It doesn't have to be so fancy. The words don't have to be fancy, but yeah, if we could come back and talk about what the department heads told us that would be
Well,
helpful to
I
them.
think Mike made a valid point, that if we're gonna do that, we should have some of the changes on the form previous to us.
Just make sure when you give it to them.
Yeah,
that-
so they have an idea of what we're looking.
Can
for.
I make some edits based on what I heard tonight and
I
send that out to you guys?
Yeah, I would have no objection to
Okay.
that.
Absolutely.
But it's the council's decision, and
You had some
I would have
asking,
no
yeah.
objection. I think
So
we
you
clarify
okay
the
with-
question.
She's gonna make some edits and suggestions, and
Yeah.
then get it back to us.
Yep, and we can go from there.
We can go from there.
Sure.
I
All right.
appreciate that.
Very good.
All right, and with that, I guess, but any other committee, anything else? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn?
I
No,
think
we already did that.
That was all done. at the
Spirited
committee meeting.
conversation.
We need a motion to adjourn the committee?
We already adjourned.
Do we ever do that? I don't
I'm
know.
not gonna,
I don't know.
I'm just gonna go home now.
Can we do like make believe in this? I don't know.